Welcome to day 2 of Streaming Media West Connect. I'm Eric Schumacher Rasmussen, editor and VP of Streaming Media and the conference chair for Streaming Media Connect, coming to you live from Wisconsin rather than live in person in Huntington Beach. There's always next year, and that is our plan. But I've said that before every Streaming Media Connect event, so I'm not going to say that anymore. But please mark your calendars for Streaming Media East in Boston in May of 2022. That's what's on the calendar now. We'll also have a February event that will be a virtual event as well. More information about both of those events will be forthcoming on streamingmedia.com. Check that out soon. We'll be opening up the call for speakers soon for both of those events as well. So if you're interested in speaking, please keep an eye out for the call for speakers. This week, we've got 30 panels, presentations, and keynotes. And so there's more to choose from than you can probably attend. Just know that all of our sessions will be available on demand on the Streaming Media YouTube channel, as well as on streamingmedia.com. On the homepage, click on videos, pull down to conference videos, and that'll take you right to our YouTube page where we have all the videos from our Streaming Media Connect events. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before we jump right into our keynotes this morning. The chat will be open, but we ask that if you have questions, you submit them using the Q&A tab at the bottom of the Zoom window. That just makes it a little bit easier for us to keep track of those questions. So please do that instead of raising your hand or putting your question in the chat. Also, live transcripts are turned on. So if you see the live AI-generated transcripts going across the bottom of your screen and you want to turn them off, you can go to Live Transcript at the bottom of the Zoom window, click on that and select Disable Transcripts. Finally, just for being here, you're entered into a drawing to win a $50 Amazon gift card. Stick around till the end and we will announce the winner before we sign off. So with that, we've got a great hour ahead. As I think everyone here knows, streaming media readers really run the gamut from the technical to the business and everything in between. The next hour, we're going to focus on the technical, but with an eye toward how technical choices can help you achieve business and content and strategy goals. So I'm going to be speaking with Vibol, who is the CTO and EVP of Viacom CBS Streaming at Pluto TV, which has been one of the great success stories of the last 18 months. And we'll start our conversation in just a few minutes, but let's look deep into some of the technology involved with streaming and OTT video with Aaron Behman from Xilinx and Leif Reinhardt from Amazon Web Service. Gentlemen, good to see you this morning, Aaron.
Hi, good morning, Eric. How are you?
Good, good. Good to see you, Leif. Everyone,
Eric.
Everyone, I believe, is joining from the West Coast this morning. So thanks for getting up early and making this happen. It's good to see everyone. And Xilinx and AWS have got some pretty cool stuff going on right now. And Leif and Aaron are going to share that with you. So take it away, gentlemen.
Okay, great. Thank you, Eric. Let me just get content up on the screen. Okay. Eric, just a quick tech check. Can you see the presentation?
Looks great.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining this morning. Again, I'm Aaron Behman, Director of Video Transcoding Products at Xilinx. And Leif?
Hi, everyone. My name is Leif Reinhardt, and I'm the Senior Product Manager on our EC2 Accelerated Computing team at Amazon Web Services.
Thank you. And today we're going to take just a few minutes and talk to you all about live video transcoding at scale on the recently released Amazon VT1 EC2 instances and Xilinx's media accelerators. But before we dive into that, I want to just take a couple of minutes and talk about some of the trends that we see here at Xilinx and some of the market data that has really caused us to take a very serious investment in live streaming. So from Xilinx's perspective, we see a very fast growing market. Obviously, all of you do as well. You're here today. We see the global live streaming market approaching a $94 billion market by 2026. Another interesting insight that we've gleaned over the last several years is that actually live platforms for video relative to video on demand platforms actually have the potential to command very large audiences. And so you see some examples of here of the likes of Twitch or YouTube gaming relative to other platforms. So this is a very important investment area for Xilinx. We've worked very closely, and this has been public, with the likes of Twitch So in the esports space, this is one of the key applications that Xilinx has been focused on. But we're seeing other emerging use cases or applications for OTT streaming, including live broadcast and just-in-time video, which is actually using accelerators within a data center to actually take file-based content and encode it in a much faster rate so that you can get your video assets up on a platform sooner than others potentially. And then also, as we all know, over the last 18, 20 months now, video collaboration has been such an integral part in our daily lives, be it Zoom calls or conferences or teacher-parent conferences or distance learning, et cetera. So we see all of these as very key areas, and we're very focused on delivering solutions to support this. Leif's going to talk about some exciting news from AWS recently. But I wanted to, first of all, just talk about some of the underlying technology that's been developed by Xilinx. So Xilinx developed the Alveo U30 high-density video solution. A picture of this add-in card or PCI Express accelerator card is pictured here on the right. This is a high-density media processing solution. It's not just the card, it also comes with a full-featured SDK to enable developers to very easily develop their OTT services. And the card has the ability to support a massive amount of bandwidth. It can support up to 2 channels of 4K P60, that's simultaneous live transcodes of content. And that throughput or that bandwidth can further be subdivided to support an even denser number of channels. You can go all the way down to 48 channels of 540p 30 content, running simultaneously on one of these accelerators. And of course, multiples of these accelerators can be integrated into servers, multiple servers into racks. You get the idea. Just a massive amount of bandwidth, really focused on continuing to reduce the cost of transcoding, the area in which these transcoders occupy within the data center, and then obviously the power. This is a low power, full-featured solution at 25 watts. And Xilinx is fully accelerating the transcoding pipeline. So that means decode, scale, and encode for both H.264 and HEVC. We will be releasing HDR10 plus support in the coming month. And I encourage you to check out the full-featured SDK, which we launched back in the summer in June. The use cases that we support include live transcode, adaptive bitrate transcode, and then, as I had mentioned before, just-in-time or faster than real-time, as we've abbreviated it here, FTRT. So Leif, why don't you walk us through what's new with AWS?
Great, yeah, thanks, Aaron. I'd love to. So we at AWS, we observed a lot of those same market dynamics that Aaron outlined. We saw this growth in customers looking for transcoding infrastructure. And with that growth came a lot of customers coming to us saying, hey, how can I lower my transcoding costs? That I'm handling a lot more video than I ever have before. And I'm looking for a way to have lower cost per stream or a faster time to transcode for file-based content. So that's where we partnered with Xilinx, and we saw the value in this Alveo U30 solution. And launched Amazon EC2 VT1 instances. We launched these just about a month and a half ago. And these new instances feature up to 8 Xilinx Alveo U30 media accelerators. They're purpose-built for these video transcoding workloads. And based on our testing, we've seen that these VT1 instances can provide up to 30% better price per stream as compared to our G4D and GPU-based instances, or up to 60% better price per stream as compared to our C5 CPU-based instances. And so that's important because you'll be able to save on your actual infrastructure costs as compared to other options in our portfolio. But as Martin Hess from our Twitch team highlighted, they chose VT1 instances because they deliver the stream density and low latency they needed without compromising on video compression or visual quality. So in this case, customers are able to save on their infrastructure costs to the tune of 30% or up to 60%. And they don't need to compromise on some of those key metrics that are important to them for their video business. Further, customers that want to use VT1 at scale and maybe use these in a containerized environment and orchestrate workloads across many VT1 instances can use VT1 via Amazon ECS or Amazon EKS for those containerized applications. And then coming soon, we've also announced that customers will be able to deploy VT1 instances on-premise via AWS Outposts. This will enable customers to service those really low latency applications or comply with data residency regulations. So that's an important offering coming soon there as well. So now kind of zooming in a bit, looking at what's in the box for VT1. In a VT1 server, we've provided Intel Xeon Cascade Lake processors with up to 192 gigabytes of system memory. We'll have those up to 8 Xilinx Alveo U30 media accelerators that we mentioned. We'll also provide up to 25 gigabits per second of networking throughput and 19 gigabits per second of dedicated EBS bandwidth for your storage. And then every VT1 instance, every customer on VT1 instances will leverage that Xilinx Video SDK that Aaron mentioned, and that'll come with the XMA APIs that customers can use to integrate, C-based APIs that customers can use to integrate with their application directly, or if they're using FFmpeg, they can use that framework layer and use FFmpeg with VT1 instances as well. And then finally, what we wanted to mention is, while VT1 is a new offering in our kind of infrastructure layer of services, we really see this as a complementary offering to all of our AWS media services. So whether you're using CloudFront for your CDN network, or you're using Media Connect for live video transport, really you can use VT1 as part of a broader video processing pipeline on AWS. So then moving on to my final slide. We encourage you to go out and try VT1 instances today. We'd love to hear about your experience. They're available in our US East Northern Virginia, our US West Oregon region, as well as our Ireland and Tokyo regions. You can purchase VT1 instances as an on-demand instance or a reserved instance. You can also use spot purchasing options or roll VT1 instances into a savings plan. And then at the bottom here, I've just got a final overview of our 3 instance sizes for VT1. We offer 3x large, 6x large, and 24x large with 1, 2, and 8 U30 accelerators respectively. This will provide up to 96 vCPUs, 192 gigabytes of system memory, 25 gigabits per second of networking throughput. And our pricing will start at just 65 cents an hour. So you have that really low entry point to getting started with VT1, experimenting with the accelerator, making sure it works within your video pipeline. And then you can also scale up as needed to having multiple U30 cards actually within a single VM. So that's VT1 instances. I want to say thanks everyone for tuning in today. Thanks Aaron for having me on and letting me join you. Yeah, looking forward to the keynote.
Thanks a lot, Leif. Yeah, and I'd like to thank the audience for listening in. So Eric, that concludes what we wanted to chat about this morning. I guess without further ado, why don't we hand it back to you, unless there are any questions from the audience.
You bet. That's great stuff. And there'll be an article. I was hoping to get an article on streamingmedia.com before Streaming Media West Connect. We had a great conversation last week, but there'll be more information coming up next week. But we do have a question from the audience. Jonas Ribeiro says, and this may be more directed at Leif than Aaron, for cloud processing, you need an encoder to send the content to the cloud. For live content 24/7, on-prem encoders are cheaper than a great cloud contract. When do you see this cost challenge being resolved?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, you know, I don't know that I have a kind of bombshell answer for you on that one. I think there's all kinds of different cloud-based solutions as well as on-prem solutions. One thing that comes to mind immediately is actually through our Elemental team, and we have our Elemental Link appliances that kind of enable that primary encoder on a live video ingest. And so, you know, I think over time we'll see as we continue to scale and provide more and more services, and we'll continue partnering with Xilinx on what different solutions they bring and can help us bring to the cloud, then maybe we'll see some of those cost deltas resolve. But until then, you know, we like to make sure we can provide all of those, all of that necessary technology, and Elemental Link is another appliance that we provide there.
Terrific. It's also worth noting something else that's pointed out in another article that we just ran on streamingmedia.com, where we talked to the folks at Xilinx, that the solutions you're talking about here are much more environmentally friendly and energy efficient than many of the alternatives on the market. And as our industry turns its attention increasingly to what we like to call the greening of streaming, those concerns are certainly coming to the forefront. and it saves money as well. So it's a win-win.
Absolutely. Yes. Thanks, Eric.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Leif. And we're going to move on now to my discussion with Vibol from Pluto TV. If you look at the last 18 months, there's been no bigger trend than the explosion in the use of fast channels, free ad-supported television. What a novel idea. People just want to turn on a screen and have content come at them that they can browse and watch without worrying about logins once they've signed up for the service. And Pluto TV has been the biggest success story of them all. The company became part of the Viacom CBS family recently. And I believe you're now at about 52 million or more monthly active users. Is that right, Vibol?
That's right.
And the company reached its $1 billion revenue goal a full year ahead of schedule. So Vibol, who is the EVP and CTO for streaming at Viacom CBS at Pluto TV. And we're going to spend the next 40 minutes or so talking about the journey that he and Pluto TV have taken in the last almost decade, and as well as talk about some of the trends in the broader OTT market. So with that, Vibol, good morning from the West Coast.
Good morning, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. I'm really looking forward to, talking about how the technology and the people and the business strategy all work together to achieve the amazing success that Pluto TV has had. But you've been working in tech for a couple of decades now. Could you talk a little bit about your background and what led you to OTT video?
Yeah, so, I started my career building software at a video streaming startup called Stim TV. This was, probably around 2005, and Flash video was just starting to take off. You'll recall that's the year YouTube launched. Yep. And just a bevy of other Flash-enabled video sites. I think Flash had a large part to play in making video available at the time. Stim TV was a video discovery engine. Right? With all of these videos coming in, we were trying to build something that allowed people to, watch or discover more of the videos. And we spent a lot of time building software, with the exception of the video encoders. We built DVD ingestion systems, taking those DVDs, plugging them in the carousel, scanning the codes, reading them into the hard drive on the server somewhere, content management systems, the recommenders themselves. We built a lot of tech around Flash video stitching, taking them apart, putting them back together. And it formed the basis of some of our temporal video search that we had also done there. By 2007, Stim TV had won an Emmy, a technology and engineering Emmy, for the work that we'd done. And then, unfortunately, that was 2007, and it was a difficult time for everyone. And
right.
We didn't survive that time, but I went on to working on many other digital media properties at eHow and Spin Media, building a lot of digital media websites there, before leaving to start my own tech consulting business. And that's when I was introduced to Pluto TV. The job seemed quite straightforward. I was asked to help Pluto TV launch the product. They'd spent a lot of time building some of the core concepts, and a colleague of mine met the company, knew that I was doing some work for small companies, helping them get off the ground. And what was supposed to be a 3-day out of the week endeavor in the office working with the team turned into a 7-day out of the week endeavor for the next few months, working up until the final minute just before launch, 7 a.m. Early April 2014, to launch the product. And unfortunately, it didn't launch to a lot of fanfare back then, but here we are today.
Right, right. As you look back on your experience and your training and education, as I said, our audience is, we get a lot of engineers in the audience. What has been the most valuable experience or piece of education that you can sort of look back on and maybe point out to our audience?
Yeah, many might assume that I have a degree in computer science, but I actually have a degree in cognitive science and specialization in human-computer interaction. And by the time I'd started college, I'd already done a fair amount of work for companies doing systems and network administration, managing Linux and Windows servers. And I was also moonlighting building websites for clients, and spent a fair amount of time in college doing the same thing to support myself through college. The reason I chose cognitive science is because I thought that the user-centered design theories would be very helpful to round out my skill set when it came to solving problems for my clients, and it proved to be true. So when I look back on my career, I would say the single most valuable skill that I developed was how to empathize with users.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very technical at all, but being able to translate that problem set that our users encounter, and in all of the places that I've worked, it's been getting people access, right, to information.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it was, how do we get people access to content? So I place myself in their shoes, try to understand all the friction points that they encounter, trying to get access to the content, trying to achieve some sort of an outcome. And coupled with my knowledge in managing systems and networks and writing code, I've been able to build a lot of solutions to reduce that friction.
It really does all come back to that, doesn't it? I mean, as a journalist and a conference programmer, I'm always asking myself, well, what's best for the reader, right? Put yourself in the reader's shoes, or your conference attendee's shoes, or, as you said, your viewer's position. As I was getting ready this morning, I went to Pluto.tv on my computer, and sure enough, gosh, I could start watching Tomorrow Never Dies right now if I wanted to, right? It was an almost frictionless experience. You give the viewer, if they come to Pluto TV on a web browser, a minute of whatever comes up live, and then within that minute, if they decide to sign up, it's just first name, email, password, and what year were you born. That's it. There's no credit card, nothing. They're watching what they want to watch. So it is about as frictionless as it could possibly be. But let's talk about, we've talked about how you've gotten to where you are today with Pluto, but let's talk about the evolution of Pluto TV and how the service has changed and grown since you've launched that. You said it was a Saturday morning in 2014?
It was, yeah. It was a sleepy morning. We were waiting for the press to hit. We didn't quite know what to expect. We spent so much time trying to build scalable services. We went from initially building the comps and using WebSockets to thinking about, well, this might not scale that well, if we needed to cover 10,000 users concurrently.
Mm-hmm.
There were intrinsic problems at the time with us, with that newer technology. And so we had to rebuild quite a bit. By the time I joined, all of that was kind of in place. And so we re-architected a lot. But I think that we managed to get it all done, launch the product. It's always nice seeing, a trickle of users come in.
Right.
We had our graphs up, and we started seeing a few people trickle in over the day. But I'll tell you, after that marathon session, we were sleeping.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Once the launch euphoria wore off, we hit the sack.
And so Pluto started out as an AVOD service. And how did Pluto evolve from AVOD to FAST? What made you see that the FAST revolution was coming?
Yeah, it's interesting. We structurally, what we had built was always streaming, right? So it was always linear, live linear streaming. Our initial technology was taking basically YouTube video clips And we used the APIs that were available, and we stitched them together in the client side. And so they were basically virtual clips that were lined up back to back to mimic a live stream. So we were able to test that out, that theory. People were interested in the product. They were interested in consuming a linear stream of video clips. And we took that to the next level. Once we proved out that we could get people interested in watching back-to-back video clips, and they would stay. And these weren't the best types of content. This was a number of it was UGC. We decided to start developing relationship with content partners, and that's when how would we pay for this content? That question was a big one, and we fortunately were able to find a number of content partners that were interested in experimenting with us. At that time, no one was we couldn't get a lot of deals in.
Right.
What is this small scrappy service that is deployed to a couple of platforms? Who's interested in that? But we had a number of early partners who wanted to try things out. And so we moved to the next level, moving away from building on these APIs and, building on top of native video players, doing the content encoding and the backend storage and delivery and all the things that I think everyone in the audience is quite familiar with these days. And so, we still built as VOD, and our initial next generation tech was also client-side stitched. There wasn't a lot of technology to stitch VOD content together back when we started. I mean, there was a few services, but we didn't have a lot of money as a startup, and we couldn't pay those exorbitant licensing fees.
So when you decided to make the pivot from AVOD to FAST, what technological changes did you need to implement? And could you talk a little bit about the decisioning process? I mean, by the time you made that pivot, you had a little bit more money, but I assume you were still, you're still very much in that startup mode, even though you'd been around a number of years. Talk about the decisioning process, talk about the technologies that you explored and ultimately decided what you built yourself versus what you perhaps turned to third parties for.
Right. So, we go back to customers, and in our formative years, our ratings were not great. 2.5 stars, 3 stars. It was pretty bad. And the feedback was buffers too much, keeps buffering, right? So we're doing client side stitching, which means that every clip that gets loaded has to buffer. Even if it's a fraction of a second, it's still a pause in between the video, whether it's the video itself. We also had to integrate with programmatic ad technologies that were built for pre-rolls. The mid-roll ad insertions on the client side was just not that great. You'd also wait a minute, see the spinner, wait for that ad to come back from the networks, and then play it back. And it was just a very clunky experience. And we thought to ourselves, well, again, we looked at technologies, OVPs on the market at the time, and some of them were capable, but they were still outside our price range. They were demanding per channel fees and kind of platform fees that we still couldn't afford. We just literally weren't able to put the money down to take in the services, and so we decided to build it ourselves. So what we did was we started to figure out how do we compose these linear streaming channels, virtual live linear channels. We took a look at all of the specifications, the HTTP live streaming spec. Everyone's pretty familiar with HLS. And we started to concept out, stitching VOD assets together on the server side with those specs. And, once we proved that we could do that, then we knew we were onto something, and we were able to start expanding on that principle We built our kind of ad proxy, ad insertion systems. We had the video stitcher. We had our CMS, all the pieces that we needed, and then we needed to upgrade our clients. And what actually was simplifying a lot of the clients is what, having all that code doing client-side stitching made the clients quite a lot bulkier. And we tried to normalize on web technologies, but again, at the time, these web views were inconsistent, particularly on the Android platform. There are too many generations of web views, and we couldn't support all of it. We tried, and we built our own Chromium layer on top of Android, the Android app, just to be able to try to render all of the elements of video that we need to render. And it took a lot of time, but once we got to the server side stitching and everything was a single stream and the video player could load that and play it back seamlessly, there's no pausing in between assets. You just had a brief moment of spin up on the front end, and everything else was just streaming. There was, adaptive bit rate, all the things that we needed to improve our experience. We were able to build that in just about 6 months.
And how many of you were on the team building that product at that time?
Oh, geez, we so this was probably around 2000, I'd say 16, that we got to this point, and we were probably about 16 people. So
still not a huge team to build that kind of service.
Not a huge team at all. No, and by that point, we expanded on platforms as well. We launched our first Roku app. We were one of the first kind of developers on the Nexus, the Google Nexus TV, which later became Android TV. We were early in on the Apple TV world after they were able to open things up so that developers could develop on the platform. We were able to get on there. Yeah, so the formative years of OTT, we were right with it, building code and building into all these platforms.
And what year did you make the switch from AVOD to FAST?
I would say that is just about the same time.
Okay.
Right, because that's when the technology was truly available to stream both VOD and free ad-supported content. That the server-side stitching and the ad enablers that we built is what allowed us to connect to the ad servers, the programmatic networks, to monetize all of the video that we were streaming.
Okay. And once you made the switch to FAST, how did that change? And I know you're on the tech side and not on the business side, but how did that change consumer uptake? Did you find a fairly quick increase in usage once you had a FAST offering?
Absolutely. Having at the time we kept adding channels, and so I don't recall the exact numbers, but once we hit probably a critical mass of some 70 plus channels, the service really came into its own. It started to feel like a service you might pay for, being able to just switch, navigate through channels pretty quickly. We had focused a lot of time on video startup. So our linear streams, we want to make sure that they load in, Flash. So changing the channel on the remote felt like television, right? That you go to the next channel and it's just a flip over.
Yeah, and it's amazing how much that one customer experience influences customer perception of the entire service, right? It doesn't feel like TV if there's that delay when you switch channels or when you press the up or down button on your remote. Yeah,
and that was one of the requirements that we had in building our own tech, was to ensure that these switching costs, right, switching between the channels, was something that we could fully optimize for. And so that embodied what we did in the apps, what we did in the video player, tuning the video players to push those bits right into the decoding buffer sooner, we did a lot of custom work to try to speed up that time to first frame.
Okay. Let's jump ahead a little bit and start talking about now, or start talking about what things have been like since you've been part of Viacom CBS. How has that changed? How has that changed how you operate as a technology team, going from that sort of startup mentality to, being part of one of the biggest media brands in the world?
Yeah, we maintained a lot of our startup ethos.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We maintained our cultural values. Once we were acquired, we ran faster.
Really?
Yeah, we didn't slow down a bit. A flood of content came in from our content partners, but also from Viacom corporate, right? So all of the brands that
Mm-hmm.
Viacom had, we started building video channels and ingesting, tens of hours, thousands of hours of videos, bringing that in and deploying dozens upon dozens of new channels. And not only that, but we'd already planned to do an expansion into the international markets.
Mm-hmm.
And so, our team was small coming into Viacom. I think we were probably about 60, 70 people on the tech team at that point. And so I'd say we were stretched pretty thin trying to get all that done. But Viacom had also injected a ton of capital into helping us scale. And so not only were we building into new markets, ingesting all of this new content, scaling all of our services and technologies to be able to handle all of that load, but we were also building the team, continuing to hire more people in to help us parallelize all the work that we're doing. So it's been great being, I think, a part of Viacom CBS. The company has been incredibly supportive of what we do and has enabled us to maintain a fair amount of independence with, choosing what we needed to get the job done. So that's been an incredible journey so far. We continue to build out. I think that from when we first joined to now, we're well over 300 people large on the team, and we're continuing to hire.
Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But in addition to that injection of capital, which at first it sounds like required your existing team to, as you said, ingest all of this new content that you had access to into your service, has being part of Viacom CBS allowed you to make other technological advances and changes that you probably wouldn't have been able to do otherwise?
Yeah, I think that when we were smaller, we were constrained just by the time we had to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And so our ability to take a look at our tech and evolve it was constrained. So I wouldn't say that we changed any technologies. We enhanced a lot of what we had already built. And we continue to do that today. So there's a lot of focus that we placed in our ad technologies. The markets are still, I'd say, developing in terms of the technologies for ad podding, right? So we introduced probably one of the first, ad deduplication systems into our experience, so that viewers wouldn't see the same ads back to back within the same pod. It was an awful problem, still is in some cases, but it's gotten better. Now, we're moving on to the next thing, which is to just make sure that viewers don't see the same ads too many times within like a single episode of a show. Right? That's still a problem.
Absolutely.
And it's a market issue. It's just the way the programmatic world works. It's tougher to employ things like frequency capping when we were formerly an ad tag based integration. Right? So we'd run the VAST tags, and it didn't give a lot of control. And so we've evolved and introduced things like header bidding and OpenRTB technologies to help us communicate better with the market and to kind of set those expectations, what we're looking for coming back, and give us more information on the return to make decisions about what kinds of ads we want to run. So it enabled us to reduce the duplication even further. There are other enhancements to our playout systems. We're on probably well over 40 deployments on the client side. Right? So apps deployed worldwide to many different distribution partners, platforms, and so on. And the single playout system that's doing not only the virtual live linear playout that we've come to be known for, but we're also doing things like introducing flexible timelines, which is a pretty unique aspect of our system where we can actually vary the size of our ad pods dynamically. And this is when we look at it from a user perspective, we don't want users, seeing slates, right? So we don't, when we go from content to pod to content, that's how we want it to be. But the problem with the ad markets is the time for ads, varies slightly. Sometimes you could be off a second and you'll have like just a second of black or a second of slate, and it's just not as tight an experience. And so we built technologies to solve for that.
Right. And, it's interesting in all aspects of OTT, regardless of how popular it's gotten and how much, it's overtaken broadcast in so many ways. These conversations at our streaming media conferences always remind me that, as someone pointed out yesterday, it's still relatively early days, right? I mean,
very much so.
So these challenges, that you're tackling are, and certainly they're not unique. They're not challenges that are unique to Pluto TV. Every FAST service has these challenges, and are going about tackling them. And but I think we all as users can also say that the ad experience is much better now than it was, even a year ago, across the board. I'd like to talk a little bit about the bigger picture at Viacom CBS streaming and Pluto's role in the bigger Viacom CBS streaming ecosystem. Can you talk about where Pluto TV fits in Viacom CBS and your CTO role, and what that's looks like now and what it might look like in the future?
Sure. Yeah. Pluto services a segment of customers that we feel is incredibly important. I mean, the content is free, but it's premium content, and it took us some time to get to where we are. It was confluence of being able to grow the service, reach more audience, improve that experience so that buyers would want to buy into our streams. And we service the 52 million MAUs that we have today globally. It's a free service. It's a free premium service, right. And there aren't very many of those available online where it's so easy to be able to come in, into that door, experience the content. And what it does for Viacom CBS is it provides kind of a landing zone for people to come in and experience this content. And so we've done a number of programs between the properties. So between Paramount Plus and Pluto, we have channels, Paramount Picks, for example, where we showcase a lot of content that's available through our subscription services. So we're able to preview, give people a taste of the content. You may not know that you want to watch the content. This is the thing about Pluto, and like the VOD services and why they've started to introduce video previews. You don't know what you want to watch until you see a bit of it. So with Pluto, it's always on. There's always something playing, and it's easy to sample and just really get immersed into that experience. With the window shopping type experiences where you're looking at, just a box art or, a thumbnail image, it's very hard to know whether you really want to subscribe to that service and watch something, unless, of course, you already have the service. So what we found is that, in being able to do this kind of upsell between Pluto and Paramount Plus, the viewers that eventually sign on to Paramount Plus, they're some of our highest performing users, highest engaged users. And that recipe is part of what makes the synergy between the two products so powerful.
Right. And I think what's happened over, one of the things that's happened over the last 18 months, and obviously by that we mean, since the lockdowns of spring of 2020, is that viewers are increasingly discovering these fast channels that they might not have even known were there before. Particularly those who have cut the cord, or who perhaps were early adopters of cutting the cord. We're used to a VOD world, right? We're used to a world where everything was on demand, and literally almost by surprise stumble on some of these services if they're integrated into a smart TV, for instance. They stumble on, oh my gosh, I had no idea this was there. And then they find themselves having that lean back experience, but to be able to offer those tasters of those VOD services, because the other thing that's happened over the course of the last 18 months is we've just about, the market has just about hit capacity in terms of the number of services that any one household or one user is willing to subscribe to, right? Sooner or later, you're going to look at that credit card bill. It'll sneak up on you, but sooner or later, you're going to realize, and someone, I think Elizabeth Parks from Parks Associates yesterday pointed out that in the last year, we've reached the point now where the average OTT consumer is paying more per month for their services than the average pay TV consumer. And so people are going to be looking for ways to be getting free content, and free premium content will be a differentiator. And so it's exciting to hear the way that your services are working together to complement each other. You mentioned earlier that you've grown as a team to about 300 engineers, you said?
300, actually it's 500.
500.
So 300 circa, start of 2021. And I just rechecked the numbers. Yeah, we're well over 500 now.
And you said you're still hiring.
We're still hiring.
You're still hiring. So, yeah. So again, we have a lot of engineers in the audience. What are the kinds of things that Pluto is looking for in engineers, and what are your biggest challenges in finding engineers and developers?
Yeah, I would say, because we have to solve so many tough problems, right? We've built this technology in-house, and so we continue to evolve it. The challenges are real, and everyone here understands the breadth of challenge in video streaming. There's all these new technologies that are going to help us solve these problems more efficiently. Though, with Pluto, because we've invested in building the technology in-house, we have to continue to maintain it and expand its capabilities. So, I think that one of the things that we always look for in people to join the team is just an innate curiosity. Just curiosity and like problems, how to solve them, how to dig deep, how to drive towards that outcome when you're faced with a tough kind of engineering problem. We're not building rocket ships here, but I like to say that the amount of reach that we have and that we're continuing to build on top of, these technologies are key to reaching everyone and to providing that. Really, I like to think of our service as a utility. It's always on, it's always available. Doesn't matter where you are, any device that you have in hand, you should be able to get to Pluto. And just as you said earlier, just launch it up and see something start playing. And it takes a lot of engineering time and effort to make that sustain itself, especially as we're going global. Right.
Can you talk a little bit about your global expansion and where you're at in that process?
Yeah, between Pluto and Paramount Plus, we're in, I believe, over 25 countries each. Latin America and Europe are our main expansion points right now. We're still on the tech side, we're still working on building outwards with respect to our services layers and things like that. And so there's a lot of energy being focused in migrating to the latest kind of technologies, around like Kubernetes and other platform side tech that'll help us automate our scaling out. With respect to application development, we continue to build with all of our partnerships. We have a lot of new distribution partners coming in with each of the regions, whether they're MVPDs that have their own set-top boxes, to just kind of the standard deployments that we do with Android and Apple. Those platforms have helped us establish quite a foothold in a number of territories.
Okay, we've got a few minutes left, and I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about the broader topics of where the industry is headed. What do you see, as I said at the beginning, probably the biggest trend in the last 18 months, 2 years has been this explosive growth in use of fast channels and advertising supported streaming in generally, but particularly fast. What do you see for the next 12, 18 months? What are the biggest changes you see coming? What's working and what's not working?
Well, I think that we should continue to see something like consumer choice expand, and that's just because of the demand for content.
Mm-hmm.
Users have become quite accustomed to being able to access content easily, and so the competition is going to be around expanding and building on the content libraries that are available to our viewers. And to that extent, I think that the success of a lot of companies that deal in the space will be around being able to provide access to all of that content and in a very easy to consume way. Consumer behaviors continue to evolve. I think that we are seeing a lot of ideation around what that next consumption mode will be, and so we've seen things about like Facebook and the metaverse. We're doing some work around that at Viacom CBS as well, and we're trying to understand how do we interact, how do we engage, how do we shift into this new mode of consumption where our virtual and real worlds start to coalesce. And with content, that's a pretty substantial question, right? Well, when we look at the amount of time that consumers have to spend on anything disposable, that's a finite set of time. And of course, we at Pluto and Paramount Plus, we want to be able to engage users in that time as well as possible. And so we're constantly thinking about how do we remove that friction to get to what our consumers want to consume.
Okay. So that's a challenge in terms of, as you said, finite user time and making what you are offering the consumer as accessible and valuable to them as possible. That's both an opportunity and a challenge, right? I mean, and again, I see you coming back to what you said very early on, which was always putting that user first in everything you do, right? Ask yourselves first, how will the viewer react to this? How can we make it easier for the viewer to get what they want? And so I think that's really a good place to sort of wrap things up by coming back to the put the user first and everything else will follow. It's not that easy, right? I mean, it's not as simple as, okay, once I've identified what the user wants, then things are easy. But that should always be first and foremost, no matter what the technologies behind it are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, we have so much ability to create within the world that we operate, whether it's Pluto or Paramount Plus, and that creation is both in the content, but also that experience of how we put the content together to, enable that frictionless kind of mode of consumption. So I think there's a lot more that this is just the formative stages of fast and streaming and that kind of content consumption that we're building out. And I think that I'm certainly looking forward to what everyone else is going to be doing in the market, but we're driving fast and hard to try to be that, to maintain that #1 position with fast, but also to continue to grow our businesses. And we see a substantial shift happening in the future. Everyone's got a lot more choice, and we've got to be right in front of that problem.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Vibol. If you haven't checked out Pluto TV, what are you waiting for? As I said, it's about as easy to jump in as it could possibly be. Terrific discussion. Thanks again for joining. To our audience, thanks again to our sponsor, Xilinx, for making this panel possible. And I did mention that we're giving away an Amazon gift card. The winner is Christopher Wilford. Christopher, keep your eye out on your email for information about that. We'll be back in about 30 minutes to talk about how to move your streaming workflow to the cloud. Thanks again.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks.